So we're going to do this week, getting ready for the Seder, and then we'll take your questions and other things. So, rule number one, that's very important. While it's a mitzvah to elaborate on the Haggadah, it is not necessarily a mitzvah to stay up late. That is, they're not mutually exclusive. You can, if you say a lot in the Haggadah, you might stay up late. But there are many things that you can do where it'll shorten the amount of time you have to stay up, so that it's not as late as it might be otherwise. Right? So, for instance, preparing as much as you can of the Seder itself before Yom Tov begins, especially the first night, is very important. So anything from, of course, you can set the table, to prepare all the moror, right? You could even prepare matzah. Preparing matzah can mean to actually sit down and take the amount of matzah that each person has to eat and separate it out and put it into a special thing, a bag or in a special area, so that all you have to do when it's time to do matzah is you just hand it out. It's already done. Right? If you have 20 people at your Seder, you're talking about 10 minutes, you save. Now, 10 minutes doesn't seem like a lot, but we're going to give you 4 or 5 things like that. You save an hour. The difference between being up till 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning. Big difference, right? So you want to do as much as you can in advance. So, of course, there are certain things you have to do in advance. So let's follow this order, and we'll go through things. First thing, let's talk about the wine. So what type of wine should we use? So first thing, there's different colors. There's red wine and white wine. Red wine is preferred because it's similar to the blood that the story, right, that goes into the Passover story. White wine is allowed. If it's acceptable, it's what you could do, which would make it better if you use white wine, is to put a few drops of red wine into the white wine. That'll color it a little. But red wine is preferable. That is the number one top thing, red wine for your wine. If you can't drink wine, or it's difficult to drink, or you don't like it, so the next step is that you can mix grape juice with the wine. In other words, the idea is there is a special purpose for wine, and there's a special purpose for red wine. If you can't have red, then you can use white. You can mix a little red with it. Or if not, then you can use white. If you can't drink wine, or you don't like wine, so then you try to make the liquid as wine-like as you can. So the preferred way is you have wine with a little bit of grape juice. If you can't drink the wine, like you can't drink it for whatever reason, allergies, or you dislike it, or whatever, so then you can drink grape juice. That's the next preferred one. If you don't have access to grape juice or to wine, there are other things you can drink, but you'd have to speak to me privately. It's not the norm. The norm is that you should at least use grape juice. That's the norm. Now, that's if you don't like the wine. How much do we need to drink? You really only need to drink 3 ounces in every cup. 3 ounces. If it falls out on Shabbos, which it doesn't this year, it's a little bit more in the first cup. But you really only need 3 ounces. Some opinions go as high as 4, but we can be lenient. It's no reason not to. It's rabbinic, so you can do 3 ounces.
Does it matter the size of the cup?
Yes, we'll go to that. So the amount of wine that you need to drink to fulfill drinking a cup of wine out of the 4 cups is 3 ounces. The best thing to do is that you're really supposed to drink the majority of the cup that you have. So if you have a cup that's 6 ounces, so you drink 3.1 ounces, and you've not only drank 3 ounces, but you've also drank the majority of the cup. But if you can get a cup of 4 ounces, 5 ounces, 3 ounces, so then you can even do better. In fact, there is a little bit beyond the letter of the law, but it is a preferred thing, is to drink the entire cup. So if you want to get a 3 or a 4 ounce cup, you can do that. Now, those aren't very common. Right, but kitchen cups are those sizes. That's what you're talking about. That's all the wine you have to drink. There is no necessity to drink a big glass of wine at each one. So if you want to be strict, you drink 4 ounces. If you want to follow the norm or be a bit lenient, you can do 3 ounces. And really 3 ounces is perfectly acceptable, which means at the end of the night you've had 12 ounces. Right, over the course of the entire evening. It's a lot better than having 8 or 10 ounces in each cup, which people have always thought you have to do. So really, it's preferred to use red wine, and it's preferred to drink the entire cup, or at least the majority of the cup, and therefore use a small cup. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay? Any other questions about wine? You want to use bubbling wine, as long as it tastes like wine, that's acceptable. You can use that. There's no reason why not. Any types of exotic wines, dry wines, sweet wines, you can use all of that as well, whatever you like. Yes?
Can you mix like grape juice with vodka? Let's say if you can't find the right.
Grape juice with vodka?
Yeah, or something.
Vodka, well,
does it have to be
no.
alcoholic?
No, the alcoholic's not as important as that it's grape.
Oh, okay.
So you can mix grape juice with wine, or you can drink grape juice if you need to. Okay. Any others on this? So let's then talk about matzah. So there's a few issues on matzah. First thing is shmura matzah versus a regular matzah. Regular matzah is the matzah that when you go into the store and you buy a square box of matzah, something in the area of $2 a pound. Right? That's regular matzah. That means that's matzah. It's kosher for Passover, 100% kosher, nothing wrong with it. But it is that there's another type of matzah called shmura matzah. And the difference is that shmura matzah, the wheat that they use, has been watched from the time it was harvested until the time it's finished baking. And it was watched so that no water got into it. And so that it's called shmura. The word shmura means to guard, that the wheat was guarded. When we make matzah, no matter what type of matzah it is, as long as it's kosher for Passover, then it is kosher for Passover. But there is an idea of using matzot shmurim, guarded matzah, for the mitzvah of matzah. So if the whole time of Pesach you use regular matzah, at the Seder you really should buy the handmade shmura matzah. That is really preferred in order to fulfill the mitzvah of matzah.
Rabbi, are we allowed to eat matzah stripes at the Seder after we've done?
Yeah, we're only talking about if you aren't strict to eat shmura matzah all the time, then we're only talking about the mitzvahs, the mitzvah of matzah, the hamotzi, the afikomen, the korach, those areas. But anytime during the meal, if you want to eat matzah, you can eat other kind, and you still fulfill the mitzvah. It is becoming more and more the norm to use shmura matzah. Many people all the time. However, keep in mind that if you decide to use shmura matzah all the time, that means that all the cake mixes you buy you can't use anymore, because they're not shmura matzah, they're regular matzah. All of the products that you purchase that are like these boxes, the Manischewitz, the Strites, all of these brands, those are all made with regular matzah, except a few items, and then the price is 10 times as much or 5 times as much. It's much more, yeah. So the same thing, matzah meal if you want to keep shmura matzah, you would get shmura matzah meal. It's a little harder to find, and it's about 5 times as much. But we're really dealing with the mitzvah of eating matzah at the Seder. That's the one time that I strongly encourage you to use the handmade shmura matzah, rather than the machine matzah, because that matzah is reminiscent of the matzah that they actually used back then. And it fulfills the idea of being guarded, and that's what the Torah talks about. So therefore, in this specific case of the mitzvah, it's preferable to do that. So that would mean that there are 6 to 8 pieces of matzah in a pound. Each shmura matzah weighs between 50 and 80 grams. You can actually weigh yours, because it'll make a difference. But between 50 and 80 grams. To fulfill the mitzvah of matzah, you need to eat 25 grams. And I think I have it here. Yeah. Look if you see, I have a chart here. I wrote down. There are 3 different times you eat matzah during the Seder. Let's look at the first Seder. So remember, the difference between the first Seder and the second Seder is the first Seder is ordained by Torah. The Torah says you have to celebrate the holiday. The second Seder is rabbinic. We only have a second Seder because we don't live in Israel. Those who live in Israel only have one. So you can use less. So 25 grams, for instance, when you make the hamotzi, is how much you're supposed to eat. That is eating the matzah for fulfilling the Torah mitzvah of eating matzah and Passover. That's what you do, 25 grams. So for most people, that's between 1/3 and 1/2 of matzah, depending on what your matzahs weigh. Your hand matzahs, right? Your machine matzahs weigh 30 grams per matzah, just as an idea. So they're lighter. But the machine matzahs are between 50 and 80 grams each, and therefore if you have to have 25 grams, what I suggest is you weigh them before Passover, and just weigh one in the box, and you can figure out it's a pound that you bought, and you multiply by the number of matzahs, and then you know how much they all weigh. right? So, but they're usually in that area. So that on that basis, you have to eat half a piece of matzah, a third of a matzah. There is no necessity to eat more than you're required to eat according to the halacha. So you have the first night is 25 grams for the hamotzi, or that's the actual mitzvah of eating matzah.
That's a half a matzah.
Approximately. Depending if you have a heavier matzah, it's a little bit less. For this, right? For the korach, which is done later, that's the sandwich where you have it, right? So there you only need 15 grams, and the afikomen is actually the largest, believe it or not, and that's 30 grams. Altogether, that's probably just a little bit more than a whole matzah, just so you have an idea. So if you've been eating a lot more than that, it's not necessary to fulfill the mitzvah. On the second day, you see it goes down by about 20%, from 25 for the motzi to 15. The korach is the same, and the afikomen is the same. The third category I put here is for people who have difficulty eating matzah. For many different reasons, you can have difficulty eating it. You can have, you could have had surgery on your mouth. Right? That's an example. It could be something that's just hard for you to digest. Right? Whatever reason it is that you are not the norm. In other words, everybody has difficulty with digesting matzah. Right? Nobody finds it easy. But some people are worse than others. Those who are worse than others could follow this section called difficult. And there, instead of 25 grams, you have 17 and 10, meaning the second night is 10. So when you're talking about 17 grams of a hand matzah, you're talking about a quarter. Is not very much. That's the minimum according to if you have a special need. But according to the norm, you should follow the other ones. And you really should get the hand matzah. Yes.
Would braces be considered as a difficulty?
It would be what?
Braces on teeth. Would that be considered?
Only if it affected your ability to eat it. If it's just because it gets stuck in the braces, that wouldn't be, because that wouldn't matter. But if it would be like people who have jaw surgery, gum surgery, tooth problems, people who have trouble with digestion, people who have had a lot of these elective surgeries that people have for losing weight will affect their ability to eat matzah, because matzah and bread are the two things that no matter which one of those surgeries you have are usually very hard to digest, and therefore they'll have to eat the less version. Yes?
Technically, do you fulfill the mitzvah if you don't eat shmur matzah?
Technically, you fulfill it. You ate matzah.
It's just the preferential.
It's more than preferential. It's like if you would eat shmur matzah the whole week, that's preferential. If you have shmur matzah at your Seder, is a pretty serious thing. But if you didn't do it and you ate regular matzah, you fulfill the mitzvah. But minimally, I guess you could say, in comparison. Yes.
When you're talking about the afikomen in 30 grams, is that a whole sheet?
Well, no, a sheet of hand matzah is 50 to 80 grams.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Is egg matzah allowed during the week?
No, we don't. I'll talk about it in a moment. I'll go through it. Yes.
That was my question.
Okay. So, but these are the amounts, right? So that we know. So one should try to use this hand matzah. I know it's more expensive. It'll cost you probably $10 to $15. If you buy it at the Israeli stores and you tell them you're from our shul, they give us money.
It's very reasonable.
Yeah, and they give us a percentage. So those are the different amounts. Any one of these, if somebody in your house has difficulty, you don't need to ask me. They can do it. If the other amounts are the norm. Okay. Now, egg matzah. Egg matzah, we'll explain it how the law works. That it says that matzah is called lechem oni. If you look in the Haggadah, it uses that word, which means poor matzah. Matzah that is poor. The halakha says, what does that mean? It means it's flour and water. That's poor matzah. Then the Gemara asks, what is matzah ashira? What is rich matzah? Rich matzah is matzah that has eggs or something else in it. And that is, by definition, not poor matzah. So at the Seder, you're required to have poor matzah. During the rest of Pesach, you're not supposed to eat the other matzah unless you're sick. You'll see a very funny example of funny labeling. If you look on the box of matzah in the store, you'll see on the side of the box, it'll say, usually in Yiddish, that this matzah is only for elderly and ill people. Right? I can't imagine that they're doing that for a good reason. It's probably because most of us can't read Yiddish, and that's why it says it. So a lot of people buy egg matzah and they buy onion matzah and all these other ones. You really should not use those at all. It's not chametz, but it's not to be used on Pesach.
Well, we can use it now if our house is Pesach, right?
Yes, we use it now.
And kids don't fall into that category for egg matzah?
Only if there's a specific need. Under normal circumstances they wouldn't, but if it's like a little child and they have a reason that they need it, then they can. When it says ill, a little child is always considered ill if they're at all sick. If any reason a child has that law. Okay?
Whole wheat matzah?
Whole wheat matzah is 100% fine. As is spelt matzah, oat matzah, but you're talking $50, $60 a pound.
What's a cracker?
If it's made from regular matzah, then it's kosher for Pesach, but it's matzah, it's not a cracker.
It says matzah crackers on
Yeah.
it.
Right, but it's matzah crackers are just little pieces of matzah, so it's still hamotzi. You still have to wash your hands and make hamotzi, right? So it doesn't help a lot, right?
You're not allowed to eat egg matzah like the time between the time you're not allowed to eat chometz
Correct.
and the time.
Correct, you can't. When you would eat egg matzah, like when I was younger, you used to find that when Shabbos was the day before Pesach, and you had to have 3 meals on Shabbos, so they used to tell us to eat egg matzah. This past time, I see in all of the books, the new books that came out, they all said you shouldn't eat egg matzah. There's really nothing wrong with eating egg matzah on that day, but I'm guessing that the reason is because one of the reasons that you can't eat matzah on Erev Pesach is so that you should have a taste for it. You know, you're talking about matzah, you're doing everything with matzah, and then you go and you have it at 12 o'clock noon, and then come 10 o'clock at night, you're not going to want to have it. But if you don't have it, you have that desire. And I would say that egg matzah would probably relinquish that desire because it's so similar to matzah. So that could be the reason why they don't. But according to the letter of the law, you'd be allowed to use it.
What's the time period for when you have to stop eating or when you're not allowed to eat matzah?